Welcome to Housing Matters, the Vancouver Real Estate Show. I'm your host, Stuart McNish, coming to you from the studios at Oh Boy Productions in Vancouver. Today, we're going to look east from Vancouver. We're going to look out into the Fraser Valley, a complex and fascinating market. I have three guests. The first is a fellow by the name of Don Campbell, who heads up an organization called Real Estate Investment Network. And they look at a wide range of issues that affect different markets, specific markets. And so it's pretty particular research. Supporting what Don is saying about growth and activity in the Fraser Valley, we have Mayor Pam Alexis of the city of Mission, and even Mission, and I'm careful about how I coach that, about saying that even Mission is experiencing the same kind of growth pressures as the rest of the region, which it didn't before because it was outside of the major transportation corridors. But now, with pressure on the region, Mission is feeling those same pressures as the rest of Vancouver, Surrey, Burnaby, and so on. Not to the same extent, but they're coming. And to back up that claim, we have a realtor by the name of Clayton Diebert, who is a realtor who was working in the Kelowna-area, which we all know is a pretty active area, left there to return to his hometown because he says, no, things are starting to move in Mission. So it'll be an interesting look at what's happening in the Fraser Valley and in Mission in particular. Joining me now is Don Campbell. Don, welcome.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thank you for the invite.
The Fraser Valley is really an interesting place from a real estate perspective, and it doesn't really get the attention that it deserves, does it?
Well, it's just starting to show up on the radar, but right now the real focus seems to be in the lower mainland, obviously, and right into Vancouver and even Surrey, the densification of Surrey. But as we start to look out towards the Fraser Valley, and as we start to look at the world and how the world solves housing problems, is unfortunately or fortunately, I don't care what your opinion is, it's fortunate or unfortunate, the push out has to occur. Mm-hmm. The important thing that I'm finding with the Fraser Valley is that some cities are starting to get it, and some cities are starting to resist it. and
isn't that the classic thing, though?
Oh, always. Yeah. It seems to me that this siloed thinking, and we see it in the Vancouver market. You know, any solution is nuanced. Mm-hmm. But right now, with social media and the hashtags and people making a point and making a stand, we're not getting to the nuanced solutions. And solutions for housing have to be nuanced. It has to be a combination of multiple things. We're seeing now, just hosted the mayors. The Fraser Valley mayors.
In Langley about a month ago.
Yes, for the UDI.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because they didn't know the questions in advance. I made sure of that so that we could ask them questions that they'd have to think about and actually solve. And it's interesting how we heard from every single one of them, from even Mission, densification is the solution. Mm-hmm. And that seemed to be the mantra: densification. Even Abbotsford and Langley actually have approved towers. Well, I grew up out there, and the tallest tower was where my grandma lived, and it was 8-9 stories tall, and she lived on the seventh.
Skyscraper.
It was, yeah, with this beautiful restaurant on the bottom, which you go there now and it's maybe not as beautiful, and but I can still remember that being the tower.
Yeah.
Densification. Well, that may be, and possibly even in Vancouver, one of the solutions. But
I think that when people think about the Fraser Valley and densification, they go, well, what are you talking about? That you got so much land, you can't believe it. You can build anywhere. But that is an incorrect perception.
Absolute misnomer, because the Agriculture Land Reserve really limits. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, as a farmer, it really limits where you can build the homes. So as the demand curve starts to happen, and as people are pushing out looking for more affordable homes, and people will laugh, oh, it's affordable in Abbotsford, it's affordable in Chilliwack. Well, compared to downtown Vancouver, it is.
It's really affordable.
Yeah, much more affordable. And so the Agriculture Land Reserve literally locks in the land in agriculture. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to be able to build on it. And as a matter of fact, under the recent ALC changes and rules, it's going to be even more difficult for cities to be able to take land out of there to build on, even if it's not great ag land. So looks like lots of land, It ain't.
And it's not even going to be available to these super mansions any longer.
I own a couple of farms out there, and they're productive and they're for food. But I look. There's a 13-page memo on the changes in the ALR around, and they said it was about these super mansions. And you see lots of them. And how do you build a house that's an acre large on 5 acres and call it agriculture? I get that, Bart. But the unfortunate thing is, with those changes, they also changed it so you can't have affordable housing for your farm workers. It's next to impossible to do so now. So where do these people have to live?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah,
where do they live?
Well, that's it. And a lot of them are foreign workers or young and don't have their driver's license. So they have to live in one of the cities, Mission, Abbotsford, Langley, etc., and then ride their bike out to the farm to work. Some of the
getting shuttled back and forth, and a lot of times you see those vehicles
that's pretty
that are
green.
a little. Well, it's not green, is it? No.
That was sarcasm. That's not very green at all. And yes, I have to admit that when I look around, driving around, you see the shuttles. Probably a lot of them need a little bit of maintenance.
Yeah.
So from a safety point of view,
people's lives at risk.
Yeah. But whatever you do, don't build a trailer where there's a trailer already that people can live on. On a non-ag portion of your property. So it's once again, we go back to that word nuanced. Solutions have to be faceted. We have to be able to have a conversation. Like you and I, if we don't agree, you and I can have a conversation. But I know I can sit in a situation like this and have 4 people and let's talk about affordable housing. It would take 2 hours just to define what affordable is.
Yes.
And
to whom?
Well, let's the politicians hide behind this word called, we need more affordable housing. Vote for me. I'll bring in more affordable housing. And then they come out and they say, well, what affordable is? It's a $2,100 worth of rent. That was what City of Vancouver has, $2,035 or something crazy like that. And that's after tax dollars. So in order to just pay your rent, you're probably earn. You can't eat, you can't have lattes or anything, but you have to earn at least $3,000 a month.
Oh, well, but your proportion going to living is out of whack
zero.
with the cost of living.
You can't eat, yeah. So when the word affordable is so much different than the reality of affordable. And look around the world. Many of us have visited many cities around the world. How have they solved this affordable housing thing? And we go back to the Fraser Valley, is through nuanced solutions, some densification, but more importantly, ease of ways for people to get to every day. So let's go to London, for instance. You get not London, Ontario, London, UK. Yeah. And where do people live? Well, they live in small towns and small villages and small and medium size around on the train lines.
Right. They're all connected by rail.
Yeah, they built the train lines. And then they did the M65. I can't remember. The 2 ring roads around London to move vehicles as well. And that helped it to provide affordable housing. It's not just, hey, here's a bunch of shipping containers. We're going to build this affordable housing and put in 40 units. Well, it's not going to move the needle very far. It may politically feel good, but I think that once again, we're back at nuanced solutions.
Okay, we're careening off topic a little bit.
We're going back to Fraser Valley.
Yeah, let's talk about the Fraser Valley. How many communities are we talking about? Because they're all different. And
very different, yeah.
And the needs of, let's say, Maple Ridge are quite different than those of Chilliwack. And does Chilliwack actually fall into the Fraser Valley? Or, how do we classify what the Fraser Valley is? And can we look at it as a solid real estate market?
I think what we have to be very clear on is each one of those cities has a different approach to what's coming in the future. Each city, and yes, Chilliwack is included. We're seeing people commuting from Chilliwack into Vancouver. That's a long way. Long way. And thank goodness for the Port Mann Bridge, because at least it's allowed people to kind of move a little bit more, and the B-line bus is full. So once again, transportation. Transportation.
Without it, you've got nothing.
Yeah. So you've got Chilliwack. Chilliwack really went big and crazy a couple of years ago. It really said the demand for affordable people in Abbotsford were even going, you know what, it's getting too expensive here. I'm going to move out to Chilliwack.
Yes.
So now you have a commuter process of Chilliwack to Abbotsford on Highway 1. Same Highway 1 that was built, I think, when I was born, 1960s, right?
Yep.
So you look at that exact highway and then a massive population growth and no expansion of it and no extra transportation. So that's going to be a problem. That's already a problem if you do that road.
And just to talk about the Chilliwack real estate market, it's still really quite active, as I understand.
It is active, and it's not as out of this world as it was 2 years ago or even 1 year ago. You've got the federal rules around the stress test.
The B20,
and what that does, of course, is when we're talking affordable housing, generally it's first-time home buyers, people who finally saved up enough to get into the housing market, and then they get smacked upside the head. So it's like, oh, you missed it by a month. So sorry.
Right.
And
so now you got to save for another 3 or 4 years.
Now they're going to have to move to Kamloops.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just keeps just the unnuanced levers that all these different governments are pulling. I mean,
Well, they're not working in harmony with one another.
oh my God, they're actually
Working against each other.
The
yes.
opposite. Yeah. Because now what we talk about, let's in Chilliwack and Abbotsford, we have. So the federal government, let me just, there was 330,000 new immigrants that they're bringing into the country. We have 37 million people. That's a pretty big percentage to bring in over the next year.
Right.
And then again and again. Now, when they come in, generally, not all, but generally, our research is showing that they move to cities.
Yes.
Well, because they don't drive, and let's start with your familiar, and et cetera, et cetera. They also rent.
Yes.
So you're driving the rents up because of the supply and demand, at the same time as disincentivizing, making up words now, disincentivizing the small landlord.
Yeah.
Well, even just the small landlord who wants to own 2 or 3 or have a basement suite in their house. Because of the rules get to the point where you don't want to have those, you don't want to own them anymore.
Yeah.
So you're bringing in people who are going to demand it, and at the same time disincentivizing, making it next to impossible for people to do.
Right.
So those are working in concert. So in Abbotsford,
yeah, so we're moving in from Chilliwack.
Now we're into Chilliwack.
And Abbotsford is really growing.
Oh yeah, and they have a plan in place. Their OCP, their community plan, official community plan, is now set for I just wrote it down. 200,000. So
200,000 new
people.
residents.
No residents. Period.
Oh, okay.
So they're at about what are they? 130, 140. And so they're planning their transportation, they're planning their neighborhoods, they're planning where they can densify and where they can't densify. It's one of the best planned cities, and we study cities across the country, one of the best planned cities of that size that I've ever seen. And I'm just blessed, I'm lucky to be able to live there now too, right? So, but the plans are in place, they're dealing with the homeless situation, they're doing all these things. But if you densify and don't change the transportation, once again, we get stuck in this world called, what am I doing here? It's
yeah. So one of the things that comes to mind when I think about Abbotsford, it's relatively affordable. Does that mean that as a police officer and a firefighter and a teacher and a nurse and whatnot, I can afford to live in the community in which I work?
Exactly.
And does that then make Abbotsford even more attractive?
It does. Plus, you've got the big aviation cluster out there. You've got Cascade and Conair, and you've got the big airport that's revitalized. So that all those jobs, a lot of those people still, though, are choosing to go to Chilliwack or over the Mission Bridge to Mission. Now, there's only, 37,000 people over there. As a matter of fact, little trivia, because I knew we were going to talk about Fraser Valley, is 1985, my very first property I ever bought was on Eider Street in Mission. And I drove by it this weekend just to check, and it's still there.
Yeah.
Still looks okay.
Yeah.
But back then, it was just pure blind luck. That was a long time ago. But Mission's got the West Coast Express. So
does that make Mission a little bit more attractive? When we talk about the Fraser Valley, and we had Mission Mayor Pam Alexis in to talk about, despite the fact that they're kind of off in this, not quite a no man's land, because
But-
as you
but
point out,
Yeah.
they got passed by when that highway that you were talking about being built in 1960 went through Abbotsford rather than Mission, because Mission was the city up until that point.
It was, and Highway 7 was the thing, and no longer.
But it isn't now, and yet even in Mission, and I hate to say even in Mission,
yeah, exactly.
But despite the fact that you got to go across that bridge and get out through Abbotsford, which can be a little bit challenging, it adds a bit of time.
A little
to your
bit?
trip.
Yes.
Okay, I'm being.
Yeah, you're being kind. Yeah.
The pressure to build is there. It's mounting. Polygon's got a big development that's going in there.
That's correct.
Because they recognize that there is this demand for housing, and it's driving out into the Fraser Valley.
That's right, and the West Coast Express. So people who work here in downtown Vancouver, hour and 10. Because I knew we were going to talk about Fraser Valley, I decided I'm not driving in. I'm going to take the West Coast Express in. It was a fantastic experience. You get on in Mission, and then you get off an hour and 10 minutes later, and you've had your cup of coffee, and there you are, like no problem. So that is, and it was packed. It was standing room only. So the people are starting to understand once again, oh my goodness, wait, really? Transportation is important to finding affordable housing. And that's what's happening out there. The rents are slowly starting to go up. They're over the next 10 years are going to feel some densification pressurization, which of course, if you can't expand your roads,
right,
we're back to that again.
So as we move in closer and closer to the core of the downtown area, which would be I'm now putting Surrey, Burnaby, Richmond, all of that into the core. But as we start to move in, we got Fort Langley, we've got Langley, we've got Coquitlam, and it just keeps growing. And it gets more and more packed. What is the situation that we're looking at there?
Well, we're just seeing that the ALR is limiting the growth at the same time as the demand is increasing. Now, the demand is softening from the last 2 crazy years because of all the levers that the governments have pulled, right?
Well, particularly at the higher end. But it's my understanding, that if we look just a little bit below that, that reasonable priced housing is still pretty darn active
It
in
is.
virtually every jurisdiction throughout, Southwest British Columbia.
It is. That's why we with all of our research reports, we don't look at average sale price. It's just a number. And what you want to see is where's the demand of the first-time home buyers? Where's the demand for the mover-outers? Another new word, just making it up. And the rental versus the own. So people are moving out to the valley because they want to own more than they want to pay that $2,500 of rent. They'll pay the $2,500 for mortgage instead. And Fort Langley had a big brand new neighborhood that was built just outside of the downtown, walking distance into downtown Fort Langley, and it just went like that. It was beautiful, and you go down to downtown Fort Langley. Well, it's a strip.
Yeah.
It's got good restaurants. It's got good stores. It's got a grocery store. It's become its own little community.
Well, and I think community is the right word there because it does have a community feel.
It sure does, and I love going there because it has that. You can park and do all your stuff and have fun, and it feels like a community. People walking their dogs in the street, et cetera, et cetera. Now, some of these other cities don't have that feel because they're so big and so wide, and
Cloverdale kind of has that, not quite the same.
It does, it does, and but a little farther removed.
Yeah.
No matter what anybody says, that Highway 1 is still a corridor.
Yes.
And
the Fraser Highway isn't quite the same thing. Yeah.
No.
Oh, you biting your tongue there. What highway you say?
Yeah. You mean the street? Yeah. The street called the Fraser Highway?
Yeah.
I sat with the, if you don't mind, I sat with a federal infrastructure minister, and we talked about a number of different things. And he said that they have the money to expand Highway 1. But it has to first be thumbs up from the current provincial government.
Right.
They're not getting that thumbs up for whatever reason. I don't know if it's political or budget or whatever the process is. And so that...
Well, you know as well as I do, right now somebody's going to be yelling at the screen, that's not green. Now, you pointed out there's other things that aren't either. But,
That's right.
But I think that if we take a look at the realignment and the rebuilding of the Port Mann Bridge, we can see that having cars moving is a lot better than having them sitting there idling.
Well, it's better than having them sit in what became a parking lot every day in Burnaby and burning all that and creating all of that exhaust floating around the city of Burnaby. They're not even Burnaby residents, and the Burnaby residents have to breathe it in. And yes, would it be amazing if they ran an LRT down the middle of Highway 1? Yes, it would be amazing. But here's what the process is that in order to provide affordable housing, there has to be a multiple different things. You've got to have an ability to build quickly. Oh my goodness, build's not the only solution. I'll have that. Please comment below, people. And it's not all about building. It's about cities going, okay, we need to not give incentive, but we need to put a focus on getting densification, getting things densely built. And then we need to build roads that support that densification. And what we need to do is, if we could bring an LRT down, because LRT is cheaper, not cheap, nothing's cheap when it comes to transportation, into these areas like they do in Dublin, like they do, anybody who has the ground-oriented LRTs.
Right.
And then we need to start saying, okay, how quickly can we get these projects approved? If it takes 2 years to get a project approved, as a builder, even large or small, it kind of is nonsense. You can talk out your hat about affordable housing all you want, but if you're not allowing anything to be built or developed, so there's only 75 bananas left in the grocery store. The price goes up because they know the demand is there.
It's like you're chasing the pain rather than preventing it.
That's exactly right. Spoken like a true doctor there. It's exactly it. Stop chasing the pain, solve the pain, and keep with it.
Right.
But we can't keep politicizing this.
Well, but we do also have this issue of NIMBYism. You get people who will move into an area and go, "Oh yes, this is what I want." They don't realize that there is a tidal wave of people who also want to come into that same place, saying, "Well, I want to be there too," but they go, "No, I don't want that because it affects what I had envisioned when I bought here."
Well, it is a bit human nature to get in and close the gate.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, like, oh, okay, I've decided. I have that around some of my farms and going, "Yeah, I'm organic. Like, you stop spraying, please." Even though you moved in after me, and it's fully your right, I still get all NIMBY in my world too. We have to look at society as a whole. Do we want a society where people are living together and people are transporting together and people are working together? And is Uber going to be the solution to everything that everybody tells me about? Probably not. It's going to be more cars on the road. We can't keep silo thinking. If we're really and truly understand, if I'm going to live in a city, no matter where I am in a city, it's going to get dense.
Okay, so that brings up a good point.
Yeah.
Silo thinking. How can you not have silo thinking if you have so many independent jurisdictions? How do we get those cities and communities and towns and all of them to start to think together as a cohesive unit?
Yeah.
To say, we have a geographical challenge that we need to address together. How do we get to that point?
Well, that's an interesting thing, because you can see that, the Metro Vancouver, when they meet, there's a general consensus that possibly can come up around a certain subject. But once again, you go to the Fraser Valley Regional District meetings, and it's the same thing. It's like, well, that doesn't have any effect on us. We're not going to vote for that. We want the money to be spent towards us. It's only until we understand that there is a demographic demand that's coming. You got 350,000 new immigrants coming into the country. You've got the 24% of
a year.
Excuse me. Yeah, sorry. So 1 million in 3 years. We've got a 24% of the population are this millennial crew. It's same as us baby boomers. I don't want to put you in that pot, but I'm a baby boomer, and 24% of the population is us. 24% of the population. That's a giant cohort that right now is struggling with rent, struggling with, not all of them, I understand, but from a general cohort, struggling with affordable rent or affordable housing, and they're going to be loud.
Even in the Fraser Valley, that looks, as we pointed out, a misnomer that there's
Land for
developable
air.
land as far as the eye can see. It's
Yeah.
not true. There are islands of developable land. We got to go up, and we got to make sure that we have the transportation.
Yeah,
and,
no question.
And there has to be some coordination of plans amongst all of those different governments that are in the area. And hopefully they're talking to the provincial government and the federal government, because they all do things that impact what is going to be a very interesting situation out there. And we didn't even touch on industrial lands.
Well, jobs.
Yeah,
Like
I know.
rather than just expanding transportation, move some of the jobs out there where
Yeah.
people can just stay, and let's open up some
Yeah,
commercial
and
industrial.
They need that housing out there for that
That too.
So
That's exactly right.
It's an interesting market, and Don, I hope you'll come back, because I
Gladly.
think that we can do a regular kind of examination of what's going on in the Fraser Valley, because if you aren't paying really close attention, you don't hear about this, and yet I think it's fundamental to the growth of the region that we pay attention to what's going on in the Fraser Valley.
If we look around the world, that's a solution around the world, is these pockets of villages. I remember what happened during the Whitecaps, when we were called a village.
Oh my God!
But
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just
Jim
dated
McKay,
myself.
I know.
Yeah,
Wasn't
yeah.
that something that
1986
when the Whitecaps
or
were taking on the
Yeah,
New
the village of Vancouver.
The
Here
village
we
of
are.
Vancouver. Well, nobody says that anymore, and they won't be saying that about anywhere
Abbotsford
else,
or anything
even
out there.
Fort Langley in
Yeah.
the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be my pleasure.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Joining me now is Mayor Pam Alexis, who has real estate on her mind, namely how to respond in an appropriate way to manage growth, transportation, and the needs of her community. Mayor Alexis, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations on your victory.
Thank you very much. It's 14 weeks now.
14 weeks. And look at what you've gone and done to yourself. You've put yourself in a position where you need to start steering the land use decisions that the City of Mission has to make, because the pressures are starting to build. You're starting to feel it, and you're having to face issues that up until now nobody probably even considered.
Absolutely. 2 or 3 years ago, Mission was the last bastion of the single-family home with the yard. And up until that point, that's all we really worried about was, whether or not everybody had the same size yard or whatever. Now we must think completely differently. We saw in 2016 a 38% increase in housing values. The following year, a further 19%. So a massive shift in house prices. Consequently, the affordability factor played a huge role with, okay, where do we go? So the multifamily housing option was the one on the table for us to now consider, whereas we had never considered in the past. We had to rework our plans, rework all of the areas that could sustain multifamily as opposed to single family. We're rolling out tonight the Cedar Valley plan, where we're looking at phasing in now that multifamily side of housing options, because that's what people can afford. So certainly we're seeing the trend with a further 9% increase in 2018 to house prices. We are probably the last community in the valley to see such increases, because we've enjoyed for such a long time that affordability stretch.
Well, even still, I was checking out some prices yesterday before you were coming in here. I'm going, wow, that's a pretty attractive price for a 3-bedroom single-family home still. But that pressure is no doubt building.
Absolutely. It is building. And so we are slated to double in another 30 years. So my job will be to basically look into the future and say, okay, what's Mission going to look like in 30 years? Because if we don't lay those bones now, then we're not going to look very good tomorrow. So my job is to make sure that we are a complete community moving forward, that we have all those housing options moving forward. We still see the market for those that want to live in more rural properties, because Mission has an abundance of those. homes, and those that want to rely on transit and smaller houses. We're seeing certainly a trend in the young people that want less responsibility, not really to be tied to the yard on the weekends. They want less of a house. They want to reduce the size of their cars and rely more on transit. So we've got to be prepared for all of it.
So what do you have to do to ensure that you are appropriately prepared? Because up until now, it hasn't really been a consideration.
Absolutely. So things like sewer and water become your focus. How are you going to get services? Is that enough when we talk about multifamily as opposed to single family? We talk about transit constantly because we're so underserviced with transit. So we're just in the process of building a bus garage. Our services are tied with Abbotsford, and that will expand our services from 2020 spring on. So we'll be able to offer transit as an option. We've been late in the game for so many things, but there's an advantage to that in a way. So we can look at the mistakes that the communities around us have made with respect to planning.
The learning experiences.
Exactly. So we can take that and then apply it. And so make sure that our communities connect, that that walkability and health and all those things are factors, because 70% of Mission commutes every day.
70%.
It's the highest
Right.
in the entire valley. My job is to ensure that that number goes down. We can't build community with so many people leaving the community every day.
So it's my understanding Mission, Abbotsford, Chilliwack are home to an awful lot of the people who are actually building so many of the residential towers that are in Burnaby, Richmond, Surrey, Vancouver.
Absolutely.
It would be nice if they had an opportunity to put those skills at work in their own community.
So absolutely, we have a large number of tradespeople in our community. Probably about 38% of our employees are in the trades, and we will be able to offer closer to home because we have so many building applications through the gate, 250% over where we were 2 years ago, just as an example of how fast we're growing.
One more time?
250% over at this time right now where we were 2 years ago.
As far as applications.
Building applications. So,
to build.
Exactly. So you can imagine what that does to your own department. So from going
Right.
from, say 20 miles an hour to 100 miles an hour. So we're also at the same time looking at improving our efficiencies because perhaps some of those procedures that we've had internally may not work now because we are very, very busy. And so
Well, and this runs into one of the issues that we keep hearing out of Vancouver
Absolutely.
and Surrey. The process of development takes so
Exactly.
long.
And we recognize that, absolutely, and that's certainly our goal. We have created a team of developers that are working with staff to guide us in helping improve those timelines. We're not anywhere near Vancouver, but we still struggle with, because of Mission's topography too. Don't forget, Mission is very hilly, and so it does take engineering and all of those intricate things attached to development, certainly a little bit more time because we're a little bit more tricky. Absolutely.
Well, and you also butt up against the agricultural land reserve.
Yes.
And so it looks like, oh yeah, you can go anywhere in Mission, but you really can't.
So there are 600 acres between Mission and Maple Ridge that are part of the ALR. Just above that is the polygon lands, and they're starting to develop. We're just looking now at the first plan as far as how that community is going to be laid out and connected to Mission. We have the waterfront revitalization that we're undertaking as well right now. So we've got 80 acres in one area that's a single landlord and another 70 with various landlords. So we're looking at revitalizing that piece of land as well because it's vast and will be able to sustain a real mix of industry, light industry, commercial, and residential. So there are places to go. So we feel that with the polygon lands, we'll likely look at another 30,000 people in the next 25 years. And then internally in Mission with the Cedar Valley plan and other infill properties, we're looking at an additional 10,000. So we're looking at 40,000 people in a fairly short order of time. So
Which amounts to substantial growth.
It is substantial.
So what's your message to builders as far as do you welcome them? What's the process going to look like? How do you want to work with them? And how do you ensure, because we keep hearing over and over and over again, housing affordability is an issue. And it's one of the reasons that people would look to Mission. When you start to factor in all of those things, how do you ensure that we can get things built and that we can do it in a timely and affordable manner?
I have to say that our staff are extremely flexible. They are there to help you through those issues that you may encounter with respect to topography or with respect to services. We have had a tremendous number of builders tell us that it's a great experience to come to Mission and to do business in Mission because our staff, we're a small group. We're very welcoming and very inclusive as a community, and so it's reflected in our staff as well. Certainly, the timelines are what we need to improve upon, and we have embarked on this path, bringing the developers to the table and helping us get through those efficiencies. And the other focus of council will be to improve efficiencies within City Hall. So we are not alone in this, but I know that we have issues with software, for example, that doesn't necessarily communicate well from department to department, which is a problem. So we have got a consultant that is going to be basically building a roadmap to our internal communications. At the same time, we're going to be communicating differently and more thoroughly to the greater public. So we've got a lot of plans, and yes, we need to be absolutely ready, and so all of this is part of it.
Welcome seems to be the most common word that you've used here. You're not afraid of this growth. You see it coming. It's going to change the community, but with eyes wide open.
Absolutely eyes wide open, and we welcome the opportunity. We're also going to undertake going from a district to a city. So we want to be one of the players, absolutely. And I have to tell you, there's a core reason why we need to expand as far as the jobs go. We rely heavily on our residents to provide the revenue to run the city. And that's about 75% of our revenue comes from the residents. And it's probably...
You're not an industrial city.
No, but I think we've got the second highest reliance next to West Vancouver. I think that's what it is. So yes. So we need to change.
Comparison.
It is.
Yeah.
But we need to change that. And we need to make sure that industry and light industry pays their fair share as well, so that going forward, we can't always depend on the backs of the taxpayers to provide necessary infrastructure for that growth. So we need to be able to capture that from growth in that industry and a light industry sector.
Well, it's going to be an exciting time for you.
Yes, it is. Very excited.
Yeah, hold on to your hat because you've got a ride ahead of you.
I do.
Yeah, thank you for coming in
You're
and sharing.
most welcome.
These early visions of what is probably to come.
Thank you.
Joining me now is Mission realtor Clayton Diebert, who was selling homes in Kelowna, but determined his hometown of Mission was on the cusp of seeing an upturn in interest and market activity. Clayton, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So Mission is one of those places that up until really in the last couple of years, people went, Mission, are you kidding? It's like too far off the beaten track. Yet we had, just before you, Mayor Alexis in, and she was saying that in the next 25 to 30 years, the population is going to at least double, if not more, and that's already starting to put pressure on the market. What's the situation right now from your perspective? Because you're on the ground, you're actually selling homes. What's the mood in Mission?
Trying to densify. A lot of the older parts of Mission have all these big lots with older, smaller houses on it, and a lot of it has been rezoned for whether it's multifamily for like medium density for townhouses, or some of the areas that are considered more the downtown core are rezoned for higher density multifamily, or condos, and that's definitely a market that Mission needs and is continuing to build population and density.
So who are you seeing wants to buy then? Is it people who are going, okay, it's been rezoned and there might be an opportunity. dare I use the word speculate on the future, but in a way, the opportunity, it sounds like the opportunity in Mission there is you can buy a good house now and you're sitting on a piece of property that when it comes time for redevelopment may see an even greater increase in value.
Yeah, I talk to people almost on a daily basis that they live currently closer into the city, whether it's Coquitlam or Maple Ridge or Surrey, and they're willing to have a longer drive to work and live a bit further away to have a cheaper and nicer house.
Well, and so what is the average price right now?
So
When you're looking at, let's say, a detached single family home.
the average price, according to stats for right now currently, is $677.
$677. Are we talking like a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house?
That's going to be, your single detached house. So it could range from a 2-bedroom up to a 5-bedroom house. I was just given the average price.
At $677.
Yeah.
That's in the lower mainland market. That's basically a steal.
Yeah.
And so, as a result, are you finding that there's a tremendous amount of fluidity in the Mission market?
There is, despite times being slow in other markets, the days on market count in Mission still remains fairly low and high turnover rate. And supply has gone up, but the demand is still there.
I checked online and looked at the sales and the listing stats, and it said that there had been a little bit of a drop off like everywhere else in the market. Mm-hmm. But are you telling me that it's rebounding or coming back already in the Mission area?
I don't have a crystal ball in front of me or anything, but I mean, from looking at it, I think there's another 6 months of correction period before it starts to do a steady climb again. I mean, it's fairly level right now, and then in the next 6 months, I think it's going to be a great time to buy to get in before it starts slowly climbing again at a healthy rate.
Well, just saying that, you're going to be encouraging people to say now might be the time to act.
Hopefully.
Well, yes, of course, because you're going to look at it from your own self-serving purposes, because you want to write those deals. Mm-hmm. But you never really saw the bottom drop out of the market.
Well, the bottom line, the dollar did drop. The amount, when things went crazy in 2016 and early 2017, that's when we saw our peak, and it slowly tapered off from there. It didn't fluctuate nearly as much as getting into the Vancouver market, because it went absolutely crazy up and then has dipped way down. There's a lot less fluctuation, I guess, if you want to call it the ripple effect from Vancouver, and it was less hit than Vancouver was. So
one of the issues that the mayor put forward is that we're going to start to see condo development in Mission. Are you getting interest from people around that, multi-family dwelling condo buying perspective already?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Whether it's working with buyers or working with people that want to be the ones to buy these big hunks of land and be the developers and put in these condos. It's definitely a market that Mission lacks. A good chunk of the condo buildings that you see driving through Mission are actually age restricted, and then there's a couple newer ones up by Heritage Park, and then they're building up some more. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely a market that lacks in Mission right now that I'm actually excited to see go up. Townhouses have already started going up more in the area, and but there's still more plots of land being bought all the time to do more and more infill.
And what's the average price on a townhouse right now in Mission? Because you've got those stats right there in front of you. Yeah.
So the average price for a townhouse right now is $463,000. It's $463,000.
And what kind of square footage are we talking about there?
I don't have the exact numbers on average square footage, but I mean, a lot of these townhouses that are going in are in the 1,800 square foot range.
So triple the size of what you might get in downtown Vancouver.
Absolutely.
Wow. So from your perspective, Mission's a great place to consider buying property. And do you foresee any kind of hiccups coming your way, or no matter what the provincial government is doing as far as taxes are concerned, you believe that the market is going to stay strong?
With regards to taxes, meaning the speculation tax or just taxes in general?
Both.
Yeah. The speculation tax, I don't see being too much of a problem in Mission. I mean, it's only affecting people that have secondary homes that they're not either renting out or living in themselves. So even if there are investors working in Mission, they have rental properties, or if they're developing, they're not being affected too bad by the speculation tax. But taxes themselves, they're always a thing, but taxes have always gone up, and we've always dealt with them. We've always managed a way around them and keep on going with the market.
So what was it about Mission that made you say, okay, I was selling property in Kelowna, which has been a red hot market, and come to Mission? Is it because you foresee the opportunity that's ahead of us here in the next decade?
That's definitely a factor of it. I mean, there's other determining factors to me coming back, is just being home. It's where I was born and raised. But definitely it's going to be a hub. Abbotsford's already seen the prices. The prices in Abbotsford are quite a bit higher than in Mission, and it's only 15, 20 minutes across the bridge north of the river, and all of a sudden you're into a whole different market.
So it's looking very, very active.
I would say so, yeah.
Well, good luck to you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming in and doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Clayton. And that wraps up today's show. Now, just before I sign off, I want to encourage you to take in a couple of other Vancouver Sun and Province podcasts. The first is White Towel, hosted by Paul Chapman. Paul and a series of guest hosts bring you everything you want to and need to know about our beloved Canucks. And for all you news junkies on things political, especially in Victoria, you'll want to tune into In the House, hosted by Mike Smith and Rob Shaw. Thank you for tuning in on Apple Podcasts, thevancouversun.com and theprovince.com, and on the Vancouver Sun's YouTube channel. And be sure to subscribe because, well, I don't want you to miss an episode. As well, I want to acknowledge Arnold Chang, Greta Gibson, and Derek Hayter, without whom this show would not be possible. I have the great fortune of working with a great team. I'm Stuart McNish. Thanks for joining us on Housing Matters, the Vancouver Real Estate Show. See you next time.